Hello and welcome to Off the Lot. The film industry is changing fast, and if you want to make movies, it's time to become your own gatekeeper. If you've got a vision and the drive to make it happen, this podcast is for you.
We're your hosts, Ken Kabatov and Anthony Epp, and every week we dive into the hustle, challenges, and real-world strategies of independent filmmaking. We talk to directors, producers, and industry pros about what it really takes to get your film made.
So if you're serious about making movies, hit follow or subscribe. It helps us keep this going. And if you like what you hear, spread the word, share the episode, leave a comment, and help more indie filmmakers find Off the Lot. Let's dive in. All right, Anthony, hello. It's good to see you. Been a week. How's it going?
It's been a week. It's going really well. How about on your side?
Pretty busy. I just ended up taking a job back in production, a short-term gig. I can't talk about it. I've signed an NDA, but it's a very cool project, and I'm excited to be a part of it. It was an interesting opportunity that happened so quickly. I'm in development right now on a bunch of TV projects and some feature films, and just sort of seeing where the industry is at, and I don't know, this potential trade war and recession that might happen. I'm like, I think I'd like to just, maybe get a little bit of a side gig and protect myself. It just sort of morphed into this crazy few days where I sent in my resume, and next thing I know, I was hired and I had to show up to the office earlier this week. And it's a great group of people. I'm very excited to be a part of this project. And it's actually a very good opportunity for me, for my resume as well, as far as career development goes. In this industry, so often we consider ourselves to be one thing, like I'm a writer, or I'm a director, or I'm a producer, and I can't do other jobs. I can't do other tasks. When, look, like a few weeks ago, I was working in a writer's room, and now I'm doing a job in production. And it doesn't take away anything from my experience as a writer or as a director, or as a producer in the indie world. And I just want to throw that out there to people who are sort of facing the same types of issues where, I saw this one LinkedIn post the other day of this editor who has edited major motion pictures and TV series, and he had to get a job working at Trader Joe's. And his LinkedIn post was a selfie of him right before his very first shift at Trader Joe's. And with everything going on, with how slow the industry is and these economic pressures, everybody just has to do whatever they can to survive. And so I was very fortunate with this opportunity. It's good for my resume. It's good networking, and it's, just a great group of people.
I can't agree more. I think the more versatile you can make yourself too, like it's not so much taking jobs because you have to. I think it adds versatility to what you can bring to the table as a director and as a producer, as a writer. These are the times where, hey, maybe taking a job that you might not have taken if things were busy gives you that chance to think more about your project, but earn a paycheck at the same time, because you don't have to put as much mental energy into every single day, because your days are taken up with something that where you can maybe play a little bit, or where you can be learning while you're trying something, and you don't necessarily have to be the person in charge. There's something fun sometimes too about just getting out of your comfort zone and
Yeah.
trying something new, and either it's a new job in the film industry or trying a new job film industry adjacent, like what I was doing with these vertical shows a couple of weeks ago. It's a different animal, but it's a way to flex your production experience and try to learn something new. I always think if you can learn something new out of everything you try, then it is not for naught.
Then it's not wasted time. Exactly. And the other thing about taking on a day job, so to speak, let's just call it a day job, is that I actually find myself to be more productive with all of the other things that are really important to me, because I know that, okay, I have an hour and a half window here. I have 2 hours here. I have 45 minutes over here. And that time spent working is just so much more productive than if I had 8 to 10 hours a day to just work on all of my own development. And so I find that it actually is a great way to just light a fire under my ass a little bit to get it done.
And it never hurts to meet new people.
Yeah, it's a great networking opportunity. It's truly I lucked out here, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. The film industry is very much a feast or famine industry, right? And so when we work, we often get paid a whole bunch of money. Let's just take writing, for example. You get a big paycheck for the script that you've submitted and a production fee if you're in Canada. But then it seems like a big paycheck, but that money is supposed to last, a year, sometimes 2 years. And that's the type of world that we're in right now. And so when you have an opportunity where you're like, okay, well, it's been a little while since I worked, maybe this, this job can pop up, take it, because you actually don't know where your next job is going to come from. Be open to taking on other jobs, other ideas, working with other people, and just seeing what the industry has in store for you. Now, how about you? What's new with you?
Well, this week we had our telefilm pitch on
Oh,
Tuesday,
great. Yeah.
and
Okay.
it was just all about getting revved up and geared up for that experience. I don't think we do enough pitching because I have been pitching different ideas for maybe a few years, but I always feel like I feel like I'm trying to relearn it over and over again each and every time. So I feel like I really need to get into the habit of doing it more frequently because it was exciting, it was nerve wracking, it was uh, fast, and in the end, I can't even tell you how I feel we did because we went through the script we had prepared. We sort of played a couple of played a little bit off of each other and answered some questions, and then just
Yeah.
15 minutes went and it's over.
Yeah, and this particular pitch, mine is actually I have it the morning that this episode comes out. So by the time you hear this, my pitch is over, and we'll be in the
Yep.
same boat. The thing about the telefilm pitch that I find interesting is that it's a hard 15 minutes, right? And normally, if you have a real pitch at a studio or a TV network or something, they've booked an hour for you where you have a 20-minute pitch and then 20 minutes of discussion and Q&A. And so this is a very fast pitch. You have to be very efficient and get your story across. And they're hearing a lot of pitches as well. So I
Yep.
don't envy being being them right now, hearing this many pitches from the Western region of filmmakers. I'm used to pitching a lot just because of the TV world that I'm in. And then even in a writer's
Mhm.
room, you're constantly pitching ideas, right? And so, the one trick I'll throw out there right now, because I think we should actually do like a big segment on pitching at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But the one really important thing to me when it comes to pitching, try to connect with your listener on an emotional level as quickly as possible, some sort of emotional anchor to bring them into your world and into your story. And the faster that you can connect with them in some sort of mental real estate type of way, like, do you remember what it was like going to school, and then when this happened and this happened, that's what our movie's about. And people are like, oh, I do remember what it was like going to school and this happened. Okay, interesting. And then you bring them in,
Mhm.
and then again, if it's a story that is tied to your lived experience in some way, that should be up front so that you can bring them into your own world and then get to the characters and the story. But first thing first is that emotional connection, and then the character. It's all about the character. And then get into the world building. Nobody cares about the world if they don't know who the character is that's populating that world.
There you go. That's your pitch on pitching.
Exactly. Yeah, we should do a little bit more of a deep dive sometime. I guess that brings us to our main portion of today's episode. We've got another legend on our show today. Lauro Chartrand-Del Valle has pretty much done it all when it comes to action filmmaking. He started as a stunt performer at just 14 years old, crashing through windows, flying off buildings, you name it. Since then, he's worked his way up to stunt coordinator, second unit director, and now feature film director. He's worked on massive Hollywood blockbusters, and most recently, he was the stunt coordinator on the hit FX series Shogun, where he won a SAG Award for Outstanding Stunt Ensemble.
What really makes Lauro's journey so incredible is that he takes that big Hollywood action vibe and brings it to independent films, proving that you don't need a massive budget to blow audiences away. In this episode, we're going to dive into how he made the jump from stunts to directing, how a near death experience changed the way he works, and how he pulls off blockbuster level action on a shoestring budget. If you're an independent filmmaker, action junkie, or just love a really good behind the scenes story, then this episode is for you.
So, Lauro, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate you being here. And we're super excited to talk to you about all things stunts and directing and your filmography. And you just had an amazing career juggling both being a stunt performer, stunt coordinator, director who's done a ton of films. And most recently, we can't not mention it, but you just won a SAG Award for your work in Shogun season one, which is just incredible. So let's start there. It's very exciting.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a big fan of the podcast already. I've listened to every one of them. actually listened to two of them yesterday because I drove up to Kelowna and back on a job. So I got the last two recent ones. And so, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. It's awesome to listen to, and there's so many diamonds and nuggets and gems in there to either just remind a filmmaker, yeah, I do that too. I'm on the right track, or oh, that's a good idea, or I wouldn't do it that way. So there's all
Yeah.
everything in between, right? So it's pretty cool. It's really good to listen to everybody's different techniques and vibes and how they work with people and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, and
really cool.
everybody has a different approach to it, right? And sometimes something might not apply to one filmmaker, but it can apply to somebody else. And we really appreciate the kind words there.
Tools, not rules.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's really cool because, like you said, everybody's got different ways of doing it, but eventually it all has to get in the can and get on the screen. So it all leads to the same thing eventually. So
Yeah.
it's all roads lead to Rome.
Speaking of that, like, so I guess let's talk about Shogun a little bit. How did what was your experience like working on season one? You were the stunt coordinator, correct?
Second unit director and stunt coordinator. Yeah, it was the dream job, 100%. From working with such amazing people and grand sets and the time that we had to do it. It wasn't we weren't shorted on time or money, so that was something that we don't always get from sets. So that was a real luxury. But the job came to me because of this movie here, the Last Samurai. I was the fight coordinator on that 20 years ago with Tom Cruise and Hiroyuki Sanada. So Hiroyuki is the lead in Shogun,
Mhm.
and he's also the lead producer. So he really looks after the authenticity of the culture and the show and the language and everything to do with Japanese culture. So he remembered me from The Last Samurai, and he told them to give me a call, and that's how it all got started. So I was really blessed to have that experience with him previously, and then get on the show. And a 14-month run of just go go go. And like I said, it was just the dream job, and we had some really big teams to pull together. I mean, I had a core team of about 6 to 8 people most of the time for choreography and office and scouting and covering sets, because sometimes I'd be on second unit, so I needed someone to cover main unit. So we had that all dialed in, and then when I needed bigger groups of guys, then that was the tricky part because it was COVID time. There was two other shows that used Asian stunt performers. So there was Airbender, and there was also Kung Fu, the CW series. So we had to be constantly talking with those other coordinators and going, "Hey, can I have so and so, and I'll give you so and so? Do you need these three guys this day? Any way we can juggle it around?" It was just a constant juggling match with the performers. And originally, they wanted me to use all Japanese stunt performers. That's how authentic they wanted it to be. I brought two guys from Japan that had worked with me on The Last Samurai, and one up from Los Angeles. And we only have basically 6 Japanese stunt people in the Canadian community, across Canada.
Oh, wow.
And like
Wow.
3 of those are women, so it was just impossible. And they quickly realized that. And our goal at first was to train up. I auditioned 220 Japanese people in the Japanese community here, and to see who had athletic abilities and who maybe I could train to be a stunt person, and if they had any martial arts background. And I came out with a core of about 20 that I thought were maybes. So we brought them to the boot camp, which we had for 6 weeks at the beginning of Shogun, where I had them trained in sword work, archery, spears, and military movement. So we had 8 hours a day of boot camp for 6 weeks, training everybody in that, extras, stunts, and cast. So we tried, but they just didn't have the set experience. And when you get into that situation, and things change people's abilities, and so we quickly realized they would be good for like special ability extras, but they just couldn't pull off all the stunt stuff all the time. So then they
Right.
let go into our stunt community here, whom we have lots of Asian stunt performers. And they said, as long as it's Asian ethnicity, you can go Vietnamese, you can go Japanese and Chinese, Korean, whatever, but just keep it in the Asian ethnicity. So I was able to bring in all the guys I'd worked with before, and so many talented people and stuff. So it really, really paid off. It was really good.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Uh,
But at least for the ones that you did manage to train, that they still got a job out of it as special skills extras or something like that, right? In the background.
They were on the show pretty much the whole season in different capacities, either as a general extra,
Mhm.
being a villager or something in the background, and a lot of them got it was kind of funny because we trained all these guys, and some of the best guys they stole as koshos, which were always like with Sonata or some of the other leading samurai, but they were just there to help them get dressed and stuff like that. So I couldn't use them for any sword battles or anything because they were so well established. I couldn't all of a sudden stick them in a battle sequence or whatever. So it's like, but that guy was so good at this or so good at that, and they go, yeah, but they wanted him for this. So it was just like,
Yeah. He's dead already. We've seen him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and it was really interesting doing the second unit because we had such big pieces, and we had many times the whole sequence took place in 5 different locations, starting on the island over in Ucluelet and ending off in a water tank in Burnaby, and 3 other locations in between, in Port Moody or Coquitlam Gun Club and stuff like that. So I would have to grab the pieces, and then of course main unit shot their pieces, the tighter stuff with the actors on fake cliffs or whatever, and then it all had to mesh together perfectly. So there was a lot of meetings, a lot of storyboards, a lot of pre-visualization that we did in our rehearsal space and on location. And yeah, it was big, and the massiveness of it didn't really hit me until we were doing the storm sequence in the beginning, and we had a huge gimbal, huge ship that they bought from Peter Pan, and they repurposed it, changed it up a bit, put it on this huge gimbal, and we were 40 feet up in the air, and we've got rain towers up above us, and we got dump tanks beside us, and so I'm rehearsing and trying to choreograph the rock of the boat and get the effects to hit the wave at the right time, and the rain pouring, and guys going overboard and rescuing and pulling back on, and all this kind of stuff. So it was pretty massive and really cool. So that was the day that I went, oh, we're on a big one here.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, and even, when I was here in town and hearing about Shogun shooting and running into crew members, they're just like, this show is massive. This is a huge show. And you'd run into people like, oh, you're working on Shogun? Like, yeah, it's just the stories that you heard from set about just the builds and the people. And, it's so great to see all of these great Vancouver technicians being rewarded, right? It's the most nominated series for an Emmy ever. I was working last summer with this on-set sound mixer, Michael Williams, who brought his Emmy to set, and held it at the catering truck for everybody to see the morning after the show. And Rebecca Lee, and with makeup, it's just so great to see everybody be rewarded for this.
Yeah, yeah, it's done a sweep for sure. The award season, every time it goes out, it's taken home a ton of trophies. So
Laura, you talk about like planning these kind of stunt sequences, just to kind of get into the weeds for sort of independent like filmmakers in general. Like, what is your process for designing action sequences? And I guess maybe it's more action sequence dependent, but do you have sort of a general process that you approach when you get the script and start talking with the director?
yeah, I mean, it starts with the script, always with the story, and that's the key thing I think that's made my situation so successful. Is a lot of stunt guys want to do big stunts, and sometimes you have to go with what's in the script, and sometimes they try to embellish them or make them bigger, and it doesn't fit the story anymore. So it doesn't really work for the story. So you really got to study the story. And so I go through with a yellow highlighter, and I highlight all the action, and I make sure I read the dialogue as well. A lot of guys only read the action, but I read the dialogue to see what's happening with the characters, so I know what they're thinking, where they've come from, where they're going, all that kind of stuff. Highlight the action. Then we take the action out of the script and we break it down on a like an Excel sheet. We use numbers, but same thing. And we put the scenes in and the description and everything like that. And then I start to go, what am I going to need for this to make this happen the way that we want to see it happen? So I need stunt doubles for these characters. There's also 5 bad guys here, ND bad guys, whatever. Okay. And then I'll put in sometimes certain props that I want, if I want breakaways or something to enhance the action and make it more brutal or whatever, depending on the story again, what they need. And I'll put those in the side columns, notes. And then also sometimes I'll put in side notes for special effects that I've got to collaborate with, as far as maybe someone's getting set on fire, maybe someone's getting blown up, maybe there's just a blast flying in the room, whatever the case might be, that special effects has to help us with. I want to make sure that we are on the same page and that they're prepping for what I hope to see in the gag as well, sort of thing. I can't spring it on them on the day, otherwise they don't have it. You know what I mean? So all this stuff has to happen way ahead, and I've got to think through it and put it on the page. And I work closely with Charlene Royer, who's my assistant stunt coordinator on most everything that I do. So we bat it back and forth, get everything on the page, And then we start to budget it out, and then it goes to production. Production matches it up with the one-liner, and then they start to go, okay, we love this. Can you show us what it's going to look like? So now we start to get into the rehearsal and pre-visualization situation. So I'll bring in a few of my stunt performers, and we'll a lot of times we'll go in our rehearsal space, and we'll have cardboard boxes, and we'll build walls, and we'll build whatever we need to kind of emulate the set if we don't have it yet. And then we'll go through the whole scene bit by bit, and I'll shoot it the way that I feel that it should be shot, and not to force the directors to do that or tell them this is the only way to do it, just to give them an idea. And then I'll have meetings with the directors and the producers once they look over the previs. And then they'll go, no, we really love it like this. But the director might go, I was thinking of being more inside the character's head, so I want to be more his POV or over his shoulder, whatever the case might be. And I go, okay, I'll do a reshoot, and we'll plunk in those pieces. And so then we'll go back to the drawing board, probably keep 3/4 of what we already shot, but just change it up a little bit and present it to them. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. And that doesn't mean they're going to shoot it exactly the same way. You might have different lenses, different angles, might have a crane, might have a steady cam, whatever the case might be. But it gives them the idea, and then he shows it to the DP. They have an idea of how they want to write it, all that kind of stuff. And then usually, sometimes, like in the case of Shogun, I'll go back and I'll do it one more time, and I'll have a meeting with the director and the director of photography, the DOP as well, and we'll talk specifically about lighting. Can we do 360 shots? Will you be able to light it like that? Because a lot of times I'll shoot that in my previs. No, we're going to stay on the right side, so everything's got to be from this side because I'm going to be backlit over there. So then I go back and I do one more previs, and I'll take out a 360 shot that I might have put in there, do it all from this side, and our overs and all that kind of stuff. And that's where my directing experience really helps and comes in, as far as coordinating as well. Knowing what the camera and the lighting is going to do make a huge difference. So those are the processes from the page to through pre-visualization, and then we get out on set and we're ready because we've done it already. Guys know what they're doing, the girls know what they're doing, camera knows what's going on, everybody's on the same page, and you can just get through it. You know what I mean?
Basically, you're effectively working with the director to like co-direct this scene in a way. Not that it isn't their scene, but it's that you're showing them what you can do and what can be accomplished, so that they have an expectation of what they can get on the day. At what point do you bring in like the sort of the main actors to be involved in this process?
Well, it depends again. So some directors want to see their actors doing everything, right? So then I've got to tailor the choreography to what the actors are capable of. We'll get them in for training. I'll train them up as much as I can to get them to do as much or as close to what I was hoping to do with stunt performers. But sometimes you may have to pull it back or change your technique. And I'll listen to the actors too. It's like, oh, I'm a lefty. I wouldn't punch with my right hand at this point. I'd punch with my left, whatever the case might be. So I'll work it out so that it works for them and it makes them comfortable and they don't have to think about it while they're doing it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Shogun, we were so fortunate to get the actors so much of the time to come to our rehearsal space, and I mean, Hiroyuki Sanada, he needs no rehearsal. He's been doing samurai movies since he was a little kid. So he would come and he would oversee it, and he'd go, let's cut here instead of there. And that'd be about it. Sometimes he wouldn't change anything, and just jump in and do it. But Anna would come and train with us. So would the rest of the cast. Cosmo was awesome. Cosmo, we had to pull back all the time. He wanted to jump off everything and smash through everything. And it's like, no, dude, here's the money. We need to keep that safe. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's, yeah, we're doing it this way, all the previs and all the rehearsal. When we get on set, it's super safe because everybody's done it. Everybody knows how far the actor is going to take it, where the stunt people are going to take off from there, and so on and so forth. And the same thing with all the rigging, any wire work, that's all done in rehearsal and previs, and then it's already set up. When they come with the cameras and stuff, we just drop a line, hook them up, and away we go. So it's all set.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So one thing I'm interested in too is just to go all the way back. Like, how did you even get into stunts to begin with? Is this something that you always wanted to do? Or how did you find yourself in film and working in this department?
It's the only thing I was meant to do. When I was 8 years old, I decided I wanted to be a stuntman. Had no clue what a stuntman was, but my mom took me to a Chuck Norris movie, and I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And she goes, what, be Chuck Norris, like a movie star? And I said, no, the guy he's thrown through the window. And I, as a kid, as we all did, we all played cops and robbers and stuff like that, and smashed through cardboard boxes and played in the backyard or whatever in the forest, jumping out of trees. So I think most boys have that in them anyway, but I just had it in my head at another level, and then everything what she told me, because she grew up in Los Angeles for a while, and she had a brush with Hollywood. And then I went to the library and I read everything I could, because there was no videos or anything about stunt people back then. They were quiet. They weren't even credited in movies. You know what I mean? You couldn't see who was even in the movie. So it's changed immensely, and it continues to change and progress in that manner. But yeah, I read every book I could get my hands on, and I grew up on a horse on a ranch, and then I took martial arts and everything, and I grew up on motorcycles, and I started driving at the age of 6. So everything I did, I was already training, towards my goal of being a stuntman. And I left home at 12, and then I went and lived with my sister in San Diego, and then she got married and moved to San Francisco. And I said, I'm going to go stay with some friends in Los Angeles, and I'm going to get into stunts. I was 14, and we got up the I-5, and she's heading for San Francisco. I said, right here, you can drop me off right here. I'm just in the middle of nowhere in Los Angeles. And she started crying, and she said, you lying to me. You don't know where you're going. You don't know anybody here. And I said, that's okay. I'll be fine. Of course, there's no cell phones back then. So she's like, I'm never going to see you again. I said, don't worry. I'll call mom. She'll call you. We'll get hooked back up again, sort of thing. And I just started walking. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And I walked from 11 until 11 that night, just going, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I just had a backpack and nothing else. Didn't know anybody. And so 11 o'clock at night, I called a taxi, and I said, take me to the nearest studio. They took me to CBS Studios in Los Angeles. And right across the street was the Farmer's Daughter's Market Hotel. It's now called the Short Stories Hotel. I just stayed there recently because it's got so much nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
But so I stayed there, and then I went through the phone book and looked up everything Stunts Unlimited, Stuntmen's Association, Stunts International, all those organizations. And I would go to the office, and they were all like, "Go away, kid," because I was 14. I didn't know anybody in the business. I didn't have a father or a brother that was in stunts, so it was just kind of like, nice dream kid. And then I started going to Universal Studios, and I'd go and watch the stunt show, and then I'd talk to the stunt guys afterwards, and they'd say, well, go get in a martial arts school, or go train at a gymnastics club or whatever, and get to know some stunt people that way, sort of thing. So I noted that down, and I quickly started to run out of money. I had saved up a bunch of money, and now I wasn't working or anything, so I needed a job. And then I asked, before I left Universal, I said, hey, if a person works here, can they get in here for free? Yeah, that's part of the perks. So I took a job as a mascot, like a baby werewolf. And so I would greet people on the tram and everything like that, and show them where to go to certain places, and just sweat my ass off because you're in this fuzzy, woolly thing. But I only had to put in about 4 or 5 hours, and then boom, I could go in the park and watch the stunt show and talk to the guys some more and stuff like that. So they kind of pointed me to the right martial arts schools to go to, and then I got training in martial arts, and eventually I ran out of money. I moved back to Canada. Martial arts organization that I joined up with, the head instructor was from Los Angeles, and it turns out that he was a stuntman, and his name was Fumio Demura. He was also one of the most world-renowned martial artists at the time, and still is. He passed away last year, but he doubled Pat Morita in the Karate Kid movies. Found that out, and I started asking him all kinds of questions, and he helped point me in the right direction. And I was in Los Angeles, and he said, you know what, there's 5,000... At this time, there was at least 5,000 stuntmen in Los Angeles. He said, why don't you can work in Canada, right? And I go, yeah. He says, you should go back there, because they're starting to make a lot of movies in Vancouver. And he says, I bet you they don't have very many stuntmen up there. And I bet you'll get going a lot quicker there than you will here. So I took his advice, and I moved to Vancouver. Didn't have a dime to my name. And I lived in my truck for about a month and a half. Finally found a place to stay, got some odd jobs, and then I broke in doing extra work. And so my whole goal was obviously to become a stuntman. So I wanted to get on the set being an extra, and then I'd find out who the stunt coordinator was and run and give him my resume and picture and stuff, right? And eventually I bugged enough people and finally got a chance. Actually, my first stunt was on MacGyver. I was a special skills extra, and there was a fight scene going on, and this girl hit this big guy with a frying pan, and he goes flying back into the crowd. And we were supposed to just kind of get bumped and olay him. That was the special ability extra thing. But the director wanted to see a couple of us get knocked down. So Vince Dedrick Jr., the stunt coordinator he was from LA, he came up and he says, if you hit the ground this time, I'll bump you up to stunt. So I was like, yes. This guy just barely touched me. It was Ken Kersinger. And he flew back and hit me with his arm. And I flew like I had a wire on me back to the wall, hit the wall, and then hit the ground. And he came up and leaned over top, and he went, yep, that'll do. And then it just kind of took off from there. But the other side of the story of why my career took off so quickly back then is because my next job was on a Chuck Norris movie. I had gone in for casting. They were looking for bad guys in the Hitman, Chuck Norris movie that shot here years and years ago. And they said, no, he's too young. He doesn't look like a gangster or whatever sort of thing. So I didn't get a job. But then my instructor from Los Angeles was friends with Chuck Norris. And Chuck usually came to his tournament every year, but he was working up here, so he couldn't. So my instructor sent me a letter and said, can you have Chuck sign this? We want to put it in our tournament book. And so he got me the permission to get on the set. And I went to meet Chuck. And, he was going to sign this paper. And he says, so you're one of Fumio's students? And I go, yeah. What do you flew all the way up here with this letter? And I go, no, I live here. He mailed it to me. And well, what are you doing here if you want to be a stuntman? And I said, well, he told me to move to Vancouver. There was lots of work here and I could probably get started. Oh, well, we should have you on the show. Stick around. Let's have lunch and we'll see if we can find you something after lunch. I was like, what? Chuck Norris is going to invite me for lunch and then give me a job afterwards, right? So I stay for lunch and there was supposed to be no action after lunch. So they sent the stunt coordinator home. They sent the armorer home, and then these guys dreamt up this stunt. So in the scene, Bruno Gerussi was playing this character, and he was disemboweled. He'd been tortured already, and they show up. Him and Al Waxman show up, and they're supposed to kill him, put him out of his misery. So I'm doubling Bruno Gerussi now. All of a sudden, they take me into makeup. I had a beard and long hair, so it kind of worked, and all these prosthetics on with guts and stuff. And I'm laying on the table, and they're going to shoot me. And I'm supposed to do the funky chicken and fall off the table. That was the big stunt, right? So I was like, great, And then it got a little crazy, and they wanted to point the gun at my head, and it was only like 3 feet away. And then the props guys and the first AD were arguing. I was green as grass. I would have gone along with it. I didn't know anything. And they're saying, no. He's going to get powder burns on his face. It's going to fuck him up, and you can't do that. It's dangerous. And so they okay, well, we'll point it at his heart then. Well, still, it's going to get, because I was shirtless. So they put some wetsuit material over me and they tried to make it as safe as possible. And they also tried to not have him point the gun at me. But the director insisted with the angle of the camera. He didn't want to change the camera. He wanted to change the gun pointing at me. Anyway, long story short, we did a take. And then the director goes, no, I want more flash coming out of the gun. I could barely see it and stuff like that. And, in the old days with film, sometimes the flash would go in between. It didn't always show up. So anyway... So the props guys are panicking because this guy's yelling and screaming and freaking out. So they go back to the truck. Well, what makes the flash? Gunpowder. So what do? They poured gunpowder down the barrel on top of a full load blank. So basically they turned that pistol into a pipe bomb. So they brought it back to set, and this thing goes off, and there's a restrictor that's screwed in the end of your gun. It's threaded. And so that makes your barrel smaller. So it causes back pressure, so it kicks out that empty cartridge. So that blew out. It stripped the threads and blew that thing right out, and it went through my ribs here, through my stomach, intestine, and into my liver, and almost killed me.
Oh my God.
As quickly as they could, they got an ambulance there. They rushed me to the hospital, cut me from here to here, opened me up, started stitching up everything all the way across, took it out of my liver. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, 3 operations. And 4 months later, I was healed up and ready to go back to work. So I started making phone calls. Hey, you guys got any work for me? You got any work for me? You still want to do this? And I go, yeah. What else am I going to do? This is what I'm meant to do. So I was known as the guy that got shot. And everywhere I went on set, the coordinator usually made me lift my shirt and show off the scar and tell the camera guys, no, don't stand in front of that gun. Get some plexiglass up. Get out of the way. Change your angle. It was a real proponent for safety on set. And my career took off, and work begets work, and I started getting a chance to do bigger stunts, and it just kind of took off from there.
Wow. I had no idea.
It's not how I would recommend doing it.
No, this is not what you teach in stunt school. Okay, so first
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
Wow.
thought I would have heard a story like that. That's well, oh my God, you're so lucky to be alive. Wow.
Well, they don't like to spread those stories around too much, do they?
No.
No.
And
But also that's like you said, these are the things that create not just setting the standard, but okay, we still want to do creative work, but how do we've got to learn to execute these things safely, properly, and make sure that the chance of anything going wrong are virtually zero.
Yeah, exactly. And it changed the safety standards, especially here in Vancouver. And, word got to LA and the gun protocols got a lot better from there on. And, the main thing that everybody learned from that, and I'm a huge proponent of, is you never have to point a gun directly at somebody. You know what I mean? The camera angle, it looks like I'm pointing at myself, but it's 6 inches in front of my face. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we can do all those tricks and make it safe, and everybody goes home at the end of the day just fine. So I've actually fired people off my set that play with guns and don't follow the safety protocols. And it just, I won't get into a whole bunch of this, but it just blew my mind, the situation that happened on Rust, that would happen at this day and age. And
Wow.
Wow.
So now, as you're on your trajectory, doing great stunts, and then eventually coordinating. How did you get into directing? Is that always something that you were on set, you saw the director, and you're like, I think I could do that too, and I want to do that? Or how did you fall into directing? Because you've directed at least 7 feature-length films now, correct? And a whole bunch of television and second units and all of this. So
it's not an accident. I mean, your dreams change as my dream as a kid was to be a stuntman, and that was it. I didn't even dream of being a stunt coordinator, didn't know what one was. Second unit directing, none of that. It wasn't even on my radar. And for many, many years as a stuntman, it wasn't on my radar. But I'm a sponge. I love film. I love making movies. I love, not just doing the stunts, but every part of it. And I was always watching the grips, the electrics, the DP, the director, the script supervisor, the ADs, how they organize things. It was just always like just coming into me. It wasn't long in my career. I think it was about 5 years in doing stunts. And I was working for another stunt coordinator, and I would go and whisper, hey, if you let me do it this way, I can make it like this or do this, or I could do it all in one take, and we don't need to do a cut here because I'm confident I can make this leap or whatever. And so I would add some ideas and stuff like that. Well, that coordinator later on, when he was busy, recommended me to coordinate another show that he was supposed to do. So I got passed off a show, and then I started coordinating, and we kind of passed it back and forth like that over the years until he passed away, unfortunately. But and that got me going in coordinating. And then as you're coordinating, you have a vision of how you see this stunt happening, and through that vision, you can kind of make yourself think of looking through a camera. And so I would often previs that way, or give the idea to the director. Well, if you put the camera over here, it's going to look really cool because it's going to come right at camera, and we can put it in a safe spot and not hit it, but it's going to look really cool. And so the next thing you know, the director goes, hey, I got some stuff to shoot next week, but I'm going to be on main unit. We'd love to do a little second unit. You think you could go shoot this for me? And it starts to build your second unit resume. And it just kind of, it went like that. And once I got a taste of it, of coordinating, then that was my dream. I wanted to coordinate the biggest, most amazing stunts and fit them in with the story and all that kind of stuff. And then the directing kind of took off from there. So my directing on main unit came precisely from second unit directing. So I was second unit directing for a director named Keone Waxman, and we were supposed to do a movie in Detroit. So we're on a conference call with all the execs talking about it, getting ready. And they in the call they go, oh, by the way, we're going to shoot this in Romania now. And I went, oh, it's fine by me. My bags are packed. I don't care where I go. Romania sounds fun. Let's do it. And after the conference call, Keone called me back and he said, hey, man, I got some stuff going on. I can't go to Romania right now for that long and that far away from my family. So I said, so I guess we're not doing this movie. And he goes, yeah, you are. And I go, what? He goes, well, you ended up directing a third of the last movie. I know you were doing second unit, but I sent actors to you and everything meshed together perfectly. And I'm sure the producers will jump all over this. I'm going to recommend you, and then we'll see what happens. And they did. Next thing you know, I was on a plane to Romania to direct my first movie, and with a Romanian crew that didn't speak English, and I had 18 days to knock it out.
Wow.
It was a great adventure, and it really. But I've been going to film school for, well, now 35 years, but at that time 25 years. I see everything I've done in the film industry as my film school. Hard knocks, but it's practical. It's not just theory. It's you're doing it, you're seeing it, and every aspect of it. And what are we as filmmakers? We're problem solvers.
Yeah, very much.
Everybody in your crew is a problem solver in their department, and if you're the director, you're the overseeing problem solver, really trying to tell the story and get it done in this time frame with this much money, and solve all the problems that constantly pop up, as you guys know. I had a great background for that, and like I said, I'm a sponge, so I just took it and ran with the ball. And I tell you what, during prep, I learned a really, really big lesson. You want to have a crew that asks you questions. If they don't ask questions, a lot of times you'll pass over and won't give them the answer because you think they've got it. But when they come and ask you questions, that's the best crew in the world, because all of a sudden you're looking at it from a different lens, from their perspective. So I had the props guy come and ask me. We had the scene in this park where this girl's going through a park, and she's got a bag. It was written as a grocery bag, and it's supposed to have money and guns in it, and she's gonna give it to this other gangster. And he came to me. He says, "Do you want this bag, or do you want maybe something like this?" And then I started scratching my head and said, in that park, it was a huge park, and it wasn't, to me, it wasn't really someplace where you'd go get groceries and then you'd walk all the way across the park with your groceries for 5 kilometers and then go to your apartment. So I said, yeah, she should be a day in the park or something. She should have a backpack with a water bottle in it, and make it look non-conspicuous. And so, he made me change up the idea of what was written in the script for a paper bag from a grocery store to this. And it seems like a small thing, but it really, to me, it made a difference in the story and didn't stick out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? So when your crew is asking you just even the smallest of questions, it can make a big difference in your story and what feels real and what doesn't feel real. So that was a big lesson right out of the gate for me.
That's a great perspective, because that it forces you, your crew forces you to think of the details. You've got the vision, but the details become the thing that matters. Thinking about that conceptually, you're going, okay, well, yeah, like they're walking through the park with a bag of groceries. That makes perfect sense in your brain until you visualize it and you realize, well, wait, why would someone be carrying? That's an amazing perspective on the crew, because the crew force you to think logically about how this story is progressing.
And I do that right out of the gate. I get with my crew when we first start having meetings, and I got all the head of departments there, and I said, questions, bring them on, constantly be questioning what I'm doing. I said, I won't take it as a challenge or that you think I don't know what I'm doing. I'll take it as a great idea and contemplate it and see if it works better for the story for me. Anything that you guys can bring to make this better, that's why I've got you here. That's why I want you here. And then I do the same thing with my actors. I will do a table read and I'll sit down and say, look, especially if it's something I've written, but even if it's not, if I've got the leeway to change the words, from the producer or whatever, I'll say, look, we're going to do a take like this. But then it's, when I write something down, that's the way I talk. But that might not be the way you talk or you talk. So if you need to change a word, all we're trying to do is get this point across and tell this story. If you can say it differently, shorter, whatever the case might be, go for it. You know what I mean? You can ad lib and you can change this up, and you'll see in Protectors of the Land, which we'll talk about later, I guess, is that I let a couple of my characters ad lib all the time. And some of them were nuggets of gold, and others, I just threw them out, in the edit. But some of them really define their character. And that's what I love when an actor really takes on their character and makes it unique. And through their ad libs, they can do that. It's not something I ever wrote down, but it certainly falls in line with the character. So I love it when you give them the ability to create with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so true. And as a director, being able to take in all the information and then delegate that or give the proper answer, right? That's really what the job is just answering 1,000 questions a day. And like you said, hopefully your crew brings those questions. It's such a collaborative process that way, especially with your cast as well. Yeah, so let's talk about Protectors of the Land. So this is your latest film. It is about to come out. When is the release date?
I can't tell you just yet. We just got it out the door, and we sent it off to Berlin with our sales and distribution team to start European sales. So there was a lot of interest, and they're looking at the screener that I sent you, and then sales and deals and things will start to kick off.
Perfect. So you're at the distribution stage, taking it to a festival and trying to set it up that way. This is a great time to be talking about this movie, and it's a lot of fun. It's a blast, and it really features your skills as a stunt coordinator and as a director, and mixing both of those skill sets in such a great way. And as a writer as well, you've written the story, you directed it. How did this come to be? Was this an idea that you've been kicking around for a while? And talk about the development process.
Well, during the COVID vacation, I did a lot of research and read different stories online, and we all had lots of time on our hands. And I was reading a story about the Mexican cartel had taken over the drug trade in Alaska. And so this is a real thing. And I was reading about it, and they got caught because they were muling their drugs by taping them to women and flying them from Texas, Arizona, southern states into Alaska, because you're not going into a different country. So it was easy for them. They weren't getting checked or anything like that as they came in. But a dog happened to sniff one out quite by accident once. And then they started to keep an eye on any single women coming into Alaska or anything like that, anybody traveling alone, any women traveling alone. And they caught a bunch of them. So then the cartel had to obviously find another way to get their cocaine and their fentanyl into Alaska. So I just kind of took the story from there and went, how would I do it? Okay. Obviously, they're getting a lot of stuff into Canada. And so I thought, okay, if the stuff is here in Canada, it can be dropped in a lake in the Yukon and then muled through the wilderness, because that border between Yukon and Alaska, you can't keep an eye on that whole place in the middle of nowhere, right? So I thought they mule it through there, hike through the wilderness, and then get it to the cartel on the other side on a logging road, and so on and so forth. And the story goes from there. Basically, it's a story about a family that's having cultural strife and cultural differences, because we have an indigenous woman that married a Caucasian guy, and her family hates it. So they, through an instance that happens because of the cartel, they have to come together and fight the cartel together. And fortunately, the indigenous community has some special powers that allow them to be able to fight back. So it just came to me, and I wrote it much easier than what it came out to. I must have done 45 drafts, but originally it was just going to be a little something that I could afford to shoot myself, just a little kind of action thing. And just people liked it and got more involved, and we started talking to different distributors. She put a little more family stuff into it, and a little bit of a love story, a little bit of this. And I'm like, oh, you guys want me to make a Hallmark movie? I want to do a rough and tumble action movie. So I kind of walked around the house and pouted for a couple of days, and then Charlene told me, yeah, you should probably consider that. It's going to just make it better and a better story. And I went, yeah, you're right, okay. And I got back to it and did some more drafts, and it came out really good. And then I had more grandiose ideas and techniques that I wanted to use than we ended up doing, because we could only raise so much money, and it was all equity. I didn't have any government grants or telefilm or anything like that, so it was pure equity and tax credits.
Wow, good for you. That's amazing.
I finally realized crunch time that I had to really contain this thing to get the crew there, per diem, hotel, ferries. 250 grand was not going to go on the screen. I couldn't have that not going on the screen. I needed everything on the screen. So I eventually went out to Jamestown, and I lived there for 3 days. And I just, okay, this could happen here. Okay, I can rewrite this to happen like this. Oh, that could be that. Instead of a town, it's going to be an old deserted town, and all this kind of stuff. And I just reworked the script and rewrote it over the 3 days that I literally stayed at Jamestown, and just made sure that I could do everything in that 100-acre lot, basically. And they actually cleared an area and left the logs for me, so it looked like a logging situation. And then they have homes over here where they actually live in, but you can rent them. They'll go stay in a hotel, and we can rent your house. Now, they did a great thing from previous films. Is this one house has siding on one side, makes it look like one house. On the other side, it's got different siding. So you get two houses for one, right? We just hung a curtain in the middle of the house, so when you're shooting inside, you don't see that part of the house, and so on and so forth. So it worked out great. And then there's a cabin in the woods way over on the other side over here. And then there's the old Western town, which for my story was an old mining town. Hair, makeup, costumes in all those old buildings. So we didn't have to have trailers and stuff like that. Ran some power to it, put up a Skylink, so we had internet in the AD office, and we had like 3 trailers for our lead actors, and that was it, And we never had to move once. We shot it in 14 days.
Wow.
Sometimes 70 setups a day. We were just rocking and rolling. I think as an independent filmmaker, and when you're so limited on funds, you got to find a way to tell your story the way you want to tell it, but fit it in the box that you've been given, unfortunately. You know what I mean? As long as you get the story across. And we were able to, it still looks big. We went out and stole some big Vista shots, and
you had skydivers. You managed to create this little studio system for yourself there at Jamestown, which is exactly the way to do this, and right to your resources. And I love that you just spent 3 days there going like, okay, this is what the script says now, but this is what I can actually do based on the location that I know I'm going to shoot at. So brilliant. But then you have this sequence that really adds a lot of production value and scope to the movie, where you have 4 or 5 people jumping out of a plane. And how did you pull this off? We did something similar on Travelers in season 2, but we were a television series for Netflix. So this is an indie film.
Well, I shot that months prior to shooting at Jamestown. It was a little shoot that we went and did over, I know it doesn't look little, but I think 8 of us went over to Comox Lake. And so what had happened is I was talking to a friend of mine, Dave Jaycock Sr., and he skydives a lot, or used to skydive a lot. He's in his 80s now, but a wealth of information. And he knew a guy up in the Yukon that had this sky van, which I had looked up on the internet, a plane that has the door opening in the back. And that's what I really wanted for all these guys to come out for the dramatics of it. And it's the only one in Western Canada. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to get this plane? So I called him, and it's like 20 grand to bring it down, and then cost to use it and gas and blah, blah. And I'm like, oh man, I can't afford that. How am I going to do this? And then the guy told me, he says, well, I'm coming down to Comox in I think April or May or whatever it was the year before. And he says, we do training with the military there. And so I have some days off there. Maybe you could rent the plane, since I'm already there. So the Canadian military paid the 20 grand to bring it down to Comox. And he had some days off. So I just kept calling him and saying, hey, when are you available? So finally I got to, because I needed time to put it together and get my skydivers, get the equipment, get the cameras. So he gave me a week's advance notice, and I put everybody together. We went over to Comox, and we shot two skydive jumps, one over land, which some property that there was an airstrip on it. This gentleman thought it was so cool what we were doing. He said, oh, you can have the place for free. I just want to be able to watch. So that was a big score as well. We did another jump over Comox Lake. So I had to have them land in the water to land by the drugs and get them out of the water. And we had the drop of the container of drugs going into the water and stuff like that. So we shot that with 5 cameras. We had GoPros on our skydivers. We had a cameraman in the plane, and we had 2 a long lens on the ground and also a drone. So we just hosed it down on the day and got the heck out of there. It was run and gun. I mean, we had the permits to shoot, and we didn't do total guerrilla, but it felt a little guerrilla-ish for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of reduced unit, if you will, but you're getting a lot of friends and favors for that.
And we had the big glacier in the background, so it looked very Alaska. Scope was huge, and that what I feel kind of saved me. And then we had one other shot in the film where we took our lead, Tim Razone, up to Harrison Lake and just had him come and sit down on that cliff, and you see the lake and the mountain vista behind with the snow caps, and it looked very much like Comox Lake. So it all melded together and worked out perfectly. Because at Jamestown, you can't see mountains, you can't see anything that screams Alaska. So being able to plunk those 2 shots in there really, really helped.
Yeah, well, it looked phenomenal, and it adds so much to the movie. And I can't believe you shot it in 14 days with all of those moving pieces and the action. And I mean, it's just a testament to how good you are, but also the group of people that you work with to be able to pull something like that off, right?
Yeah, we still look at each other and can't believe it either. It was just you didn't even think about it in the time. You just like, okay, got to get this done, got to get this done, got to get this done. And when I direct it, no matter if I'm going that fast or not, I'm always telling my crew 3 shots ahead what we're going to do. It's a technique that helps a lot, but also sometimes confuses them. I got to clarify it for them, because they'll hear me talking to the DP and they go, "Oh, we're doing that now? No. Don't move anything. Don't do that. That's going to be 3 shots from now. We're just getting ahead." You know what I mean? But so then I got to have a really sharp AD that's, giving them those slices as we go, so that they can be prepared and have things ready. Because I like to get to a set and just be able to roll cameras, come in and show my actors what the blocking is, and we go for it, And sometimes you just get gold that way.
Probably the budget, I'm guessing the budget of Protectors of the Land is effectively the same budget as an episode of Shogun, probably not even close to that, right?
Shogun was $20 million an episode.
Right. Yeah. So
wow.
we're talking, we're definitely in the weeds. And I mean, Protectors of the Land is so well made and in its own right, but it's obviously an independently made movie. How are you approaching that as a director to get the same level of quality that you got for a
Yeah.
fraction of the cost? Like, what are you thinking as an independent film director that makes it different than, say, a Hollywood movie?
Well, I got to give kudos to Todd Williams, my DP, and he really got what I was looking for. So I basically took a couple of different movies and told my people, this is what I'm after. This is what I'm looking for. So Man on Fire is my favorite film ever, right? And I love how Tony Scott shot all the staccatic, flashes and overlays and stuff like that. It really, for me, watching that film, it really makes me get into Denzel's head. I mean, Denzel can do that himself, but when you add that, you're just right in there and you're feeling what he's feeling. You're feeling nervous, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling whatever he's feeling because of all those editing and filming techniques. So I wanted that for all my visions, which you guys saw. And also I wanted a little bit of, I wanted it to feel real. I wanted it revenant lighting. You know what I mean? So I didn't want a bunch of lights in the sky and overlight the forest and all that kind of stuff. So we worked with basically one or two lights all the time. And Todd was just such a pro at setting those and making it look perfect. And, we had a lot of firelight when it was at night. And that really makes it look real and gives you a great effect and a lot of value. So prep and getting everybody on the same page and having the same vision is humongous. So yeah, for a fraction of the cost, you can do it if you just put more thought into it, I think, and know what the look is that you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and a lot of it is pre-production, right? You spend a lot of time figuring everything out, planning, prepping it properly, because you only have 14 days and you have to get it done.
I mean, this was a weird thing because I probably prepped for a year plus. I got the ball rolling and I thought we could go and we couldn't, but I kind of put the brakes on everything that I was spending money on. It was just me. I went to Port Alberni myself and I looked and I scouted and I searched and I went way back in the back country and went, no, there's no way to get a crew back here and do this logistically. Let's do it here. Even then was, paying to bring them over and no, that's not going to go on the screen. And I backed it back to Squamish. And then even Squamish, I was going to have to do some hotels and this and that. And then eventually we pulled out of Squamish. And so I just kept crunching it to hanging on to the story and not losing any of the story, but just crunching it into the eventual 100-acre box that I had to put myself in order to afford it. And I still got what I wanted and what I needed. And I was very happy in the end. There's some times where I look at it and go, oh, I was going to do this. But I only know that.
Yeah. Audience will never know that. That's at 35 years of like you said, film school, because that's what leads you to be able to make a really great movie on what would be considered a shoestring budget, is having all of that experience and 35 years of training, really.
Yeah, and this was such a huge learning experience for both of us, and because I had never done one from A to Z before, and not written it, produced it, directed it, and post and out the door. I've directed plenty before, but you're not so involved, and to do it from A to Z, there's so many hurdles and things that you've got to jump over. And fortunately, I'm a stuntman, so I could. But no, really, I mean, just watching out for pitfalls. And one thing I want to talk about our local industry, and it's really tough. And I understand people, and I've been on some shows here, big studio movies, and you get paid beautifully. You get the big paychecks, and you've got all the bells and whistles and all the toys to do what you need to do. But I think we need to find a way collectively as a film community to come together and support Canadian indie films. And there's all the unions all have these special rates and stuff like that, but that's what the unions set up. I think our mindset has to be changed as well, because it's tough. This was only a 14-day shoot, so I didn't get paid anything the whole thing, because I had to put everything I had into it to get it done, and I don't expect other people to do that necessarily. But you've got to support Canadian indie films and come and do it for a lesser rate. It's only a short shoot. Take a cut and pay that you're going to get with a Universal or a 20th Century Fox film, and go do that one afterwards. I mean, this was during the strike. It was a time, and one of the things we found is that people will sometimes come and say, "Yeah, I'll do it for that rate," but then they start invoicing for this and invoicing for that, and trying to get all their money back to what they would have made if they were on a big studio film. And it's just like, you can't do that you'll crush these Canadian indies.
Yeah.
And then all these same people will complain when there's no work in town because of a strike or because of COVID or whatever, when we could have a film industry here ourselves and be working, maybe not for as much, but we'll be working, paying the bills,
Yep.
and creating something that eventually will work us up to that level. You know what I mean? But we can't go there right out of the gate. You got to work it up together. And so I've been talking to a lot of people and trying to get some meetings together to implement some things that will help us with that. I mean, one of the things, God bless Telefilm, and it's money from the Canadian government to help filmmakers, but it's so hard to get. It's just got to fit their boxes, and when you're doing something that's commercial, it often doesn't fit into their box. And Therefore, you just don't qualify for the money or whatever the case might be. And, thankfully it's there, but there's just not enough to go around. And one of the things that I want to try and implement or get back, I think we had it about 18 years ago, is it's so hard to find investors in this country because they go, what are we going to get out of it? Are we going to make our money back? Well, I can't promise you that. Maybe, fingers crossed if we hit the jackpot, but they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, I'm going to get my money back and at least $5 for a cup of coffee afterward. And I can tell all my friends I made a movie, something like that at least. But if they can't, then they're not interested all of a sudden. Now, I found some guys that were like, okay, we got some money to play with. Let's go make a movie. I was super fortunate, but that's so rare. And I did hit the jackpot. I mean, even if it was a small jackpot, we got the movie made. But we need to make it viable for Canadian investors to invest in Canadian film. We need to give them a tax write-off. Okay, so they got to pay $100,000 to the government for their taxes, but you could put it in a movie over here, a Canadian movie that's 100% Canadian, and you get that $100,000 write-off, and maybe you'll make some money.
Yep.
Maybe you'll make some money, and you'll change the lives of the people making the movie who, for many of us, it's our dream to make these films and tell these stories. And so everybody wins. I completely agree. We have to change the system and give an incentive for investors to take part in this.
You're employing people too. That's the thing. This is not money going to waste. You're like all those people that you get the tax write-off for, that you put that money in for. I mean, these are tax-paying Canadians.
Exactly.
They're going to pay taxes on it. They're going to go buy things in Canada with the money they make. I mean, it is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it just circulates through our country. It keeps going. So, it's a win-win for everybody. It's just we gotta lobby the government and get our government officials to understand that, to see it.
And I like what you're saying about the crews as well. We all are kind of in this together as an industry. When the industry gets slow, everybody panics because there's not a big show, but there's also the little shows don't have the community backing to get going when the industry is slow. If crews and cast and people invested those in these lower budget films with their time and their skills, then the industry will, there's always a baseline when the industry gets slow for people to work, because there's always going to be that little low budget project that's ready to go.
One of the biggest struggles, I mean, I'm so fortunate. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I got a ton of friends and family in the business that are willing to help me. And some people wanted to come work for free. And then, my producing partner was like, yeah, but then we don't get the tax credit. We got to pay them something so that because our financial structure was so based on the tax credits that we wanted to pay people, but we couldn't pay them a whole bunch, but we want to pay you something. And, it all had to balance out, and it was tricky. And that was a huge learning experience as well, going through this, because being a director, stunt coordinator, whatever, I've never really had to deal with all that paperwork and the lawyers and the loans and oh my God.
And I think the unions can do a lot more too to alleviate the pressures on these low budget productions. Right now, I think there's some sort of push between the Directors Guild of Canada and possibly other guilds to work with telefilm, in that, if you get money for a telefilm project, that it has to be guild signatory. And again, I'm a DGC member, I'm a WGC member, I support the guilds. The Directors Guild has treated me very well over the last year. But if you only have $800,000 to make a movie and you go DGC signatory, the amount of money that you have to pay for a first assistant director, a production manager, a second AD, a third AD, all of a sudden that's your movie. There needs to be some sort of leeway at a certain budget level for the guilds to support independent productions, but also understand that, we're not going to pay the first AD $1,000 a day on this indie movie. We just can't afford that. I think that just as a collective in this local industry, we have to just have those conversations and see what's possible.
Yeah, there's just so many people with their hands out when you say you're going to make a movie. Everybody wants their piece of the pie, you know what I mean? And then this learning experience. And then I learned during the process, you have to join the CMPA. I don't want to pay any more fees, and no, but you have to, because they're connected with the payroll company, and if you don't, they're going to take 4%. And if you join them, then they only take 1%. What do they have to do with my movie? They got nothing to do with my movie. But if you want to use a payroll company, then you got to, this person's got their hand out too and stuff like that. So and they do a lot of great things. I did end up joining, and I get the emails and all the different things that they help us with, and all the different seminars and this, that, and the other thing. But yeah, that was just a weird way to go about it. when you're putting it together, then there's also my original producer was like giving gas cards and rental cars, and I'm like, whoa, stop that! That's not we're not that movie. We can't afford that. But that's what I always do with my crew. Not on this one. This is not a studio movie. Gotta
Yeah.
think differently. Got to have a different mindset. Come together on it, sort of thing. So
There's also just in the last few years, because of the streaming boom, and the streaming wars have led to this huge influx in production, right? From 2018 to 2022, essentially. And a lot of people joined the industry that maybe didn't have the experience, and a lot of people sort of moved up very quickly, and they got used to, oh, this is what an Apple show is like, and this is what Apple pays, and this is what Netflix pays. And that has hurt our industry in such a major way, where people like you who have been around for a long time, we've all been, in this industry way before streaming, and you realize, no, you have to work your way up, and times aren't always this lucrative as they were in when everybody was at home watching TV. Netflix just spent so much money. That also has not only shown people that like this is what streamers are paying, so like that's what I should always be getting. Oh, you have an indie film for $2 million? Well, this is my rate. It's like, no, but that's an Apple TV show rate. We can't pay that. Okay, first of all. Second of all, locations. People get used to a Netflix show coming into town and saying, hey, we're going to give you $40,000 a day or more for this coffee shop. And then an indie comes and tries to get the same location, and they're like, well, this is what it costs. So now as an indie production, it's so restrictive to shoot here in Vancouver because all the locations have been burned in some way.
well, here's the thing, and it's unfortunate, and a lot of producers are not that honest, unfortunately. So they'll come in and they'll say, "Oh, we only have this much," and then the show shows up and they see they're spending money on that and that, and then wait a minute, you're a multi-million dollar film, right? And so people are suspicious. So I found when we were interviewing crew and locations and this and that to get this movie started, I'm sorry, we only have this much. Yeah, right. Okay, well, this is how much you're going to have to pay. But we only
Yeah.
have this much. Wouldn't you rather have that than nothing? No, this is what it costs because of exactly what you just said. Apple or Netflix or somebody came in and paid them that much, and they don't believe that you don't have that kind of money. So we almost need, another thing that I think we need to implement in our indie community somehow is some sort of certificate that I am a fully independent Canadian film. It's
Yeah.
got to be written better than this, but what I say I have is what I have. You know what I mean?
Like more transparency on the producer's part.
Yeah, because people just don't believe you. They think you're bullshitting them so that you can just keep more money in your pocket. And that for us, that truly was not the case. And it made it really, really difficult, the mistrust that people have when all of a sudden you have producer on your title. You know what I mean? So it's unfortunate. But, and, like I get a certain rate when I work on certain big films and they have the money for it. But, I had a director friend of mine call me the other day and he says, hey, I'm directing this film and, really love to have you, but I don't think we can afford you. Ha, ha, ha. So do you know a good stunt coordinator? And I wrote him back and I said, me, I'm available right now. And yeah, but I don't think we can afford you. I said, stop that. I said, what do you got? What are you doing? I said, I know you're not Netflix, you're not Apple, you're not Disney. Let's go make this movie together. And he's like, really? And I go, yeah. I says, I've been talking to a lot of people and they just tell me their rate and that's that. And we can't afford it. And I'm like, that's the mindset I can't wrap my head around here. You know what I mean? And especially if it's a friend that you've known. I mean, I've known him for 25, 30 years in the business. We came up together. He's done some amazing things for big studio stuff and he's directing now too. And you want to help your brothers out and help them climb that ladder again. It's like you get so far in a certain area, like as a stunt coordinator, I might be up here, but as a director, I'm down here. I get paid nothing compared to why wouldn't I just keep stunt coordinating? Well, because I love the challenge of doing this. So, I'll take my time off and I'll work my way back up again. It's crazy, but it's addictive. Once we get hooked, we're stuck. We're in it.
It is. I mean, we love it, and I think so many people are in the same boat where, like, certainly I know I am. I have my day job or my like go-to gigs if I need to generate some income, but I know that, like, say with the feature film that I'm trying to set up right now, I'm not getting paid enough to survive on that. You just said that you didn't even pay yourself on this movie, and this was years of your life that you spent working on this thing because it's a passion project and it will benefit you in the long term for sure. Negotiating with a crew member, a department head who's like, no, this is my rate and I want more money from this production, and you're going like, I'm not even paying myself.
they think you're lying to them. You know what I mean? And it's crazy. I mean, not only did I not pay myself, but I put in as much as all the other investors. That's how I'm going to listen, guys. I'll put in this much skin in the game if you can put in this much, and you other four. So I had four other guys. We all put in the same amount, and away we went. You know, we had enough to make it happen with the tax credits. But and you can tell that to people all day long, and they just like, yeah, okay, good story. It's tough that way. That's why if there was some sort of legitimate certificate, we could go, see, I'm telling the truth. You know.
Well, I think it comes down to that. Like you said, the transparency. Because I always think that the transparency between producers and their crews, and going like, look, you can see how this money is being spent. I'm going to show you it right now, and this is where every dollar is going, or this is what's being spent, and you see where your rate fits into this, and maybe that's how we do it. We just we just share, open the book.
Something's got to give to get people's mindset around truly Canadian indies compared to streamers and studio work, because it's a whole nother world.
Well, both need to survive, right? We both aspects of this need to exist and need to coexist.
Yeah, 100%.
This is one of the reasons why we started the podcast, is because we can see that the Hollywood landscape is changing, and that Hollywood money is sort of locked up for the A-listers, so to speak. So I was talking to the other day, a friend of mine happens to be the president of production at a major studio, and he was asking, he's like, are you working right now? I'm like, well, right now I'm in between gigs and pretty slow out there. And he said, yeah, he's like, it's slow for everyone, and even the very, very well established. We are just ordering fewer series and movies right now. And so there is a major contraction happening. And it's like, okay, but how do we survive? How do we keep going? And I see that as finding a way, just like what you're saying, like finding a way to make indie work. And we do have to revamp what indie means. And, the other day, Sean Baker, he had this great speech talking about, as indie filmmakers, we spend maybe 3 years of our life working on a single movie. And like the amount of money that as directors, we're getting paid very little up front. And he's like, that has to change. We have to be able to pay ourselves and survive in the indie world, because these movies are really, really important. But, Brady Corbett, who is nominated for The Brutalist for an Oscar, is claiming that he didn't even get paid on that film. And they made the movie for $10 million. I'm sure he got a small salary, but generally speaking, not enough to survive. He said that he and his wife, who he co-wrote the movie with, were living off of a paycheck that they received 3 years ago for a major production that they did. But that's it. The indie world is like, you have an Oscar-nominated film made for $10 million, and the director hasn't really gotten a paycheck. You didn't get paid for your movie, but it is a movie. It's going to be released, and hopefully, and as an investor in the movie, hopefully you see a return, but there's no guarantee, right? So we take on all of this risk, and there just has to be a better system that we can implement to support ourselves and keep this industry alive.
I mean, for me, thank goodness I started 35 years ago, and I worked a lot on SAG in Los Angeles and around the world, and I get decent residuals still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, someone else that I know that's worked more recently are getting these 15-cent to $4, $1. You can't live off of that. But fortunately, mine are still coming in that are substantial, and it carries me through. But like, it takes a year of your life to make a movie. Even if you do get a paycheck, that if you're on that movie for the year, prep, shoot, post, 9 months to a year, you need a substantial paycheck to carry you through for that whole time, and if you don't have any other income, I don't know how people can handle that one. That's a tough gig for sure.
It's why you run into so many people, at least here in the Vancouver industry, like who work in production and then have their passion projects. I'm in the same boat. I'll take a production job, even assisting a producer or director or something like that. Meanwhile, I'm writing my script and I'm looking for financing for my features, or writing the next TV show that I'm going to pitch or take into development. But it's sort of, everybody has multiple gigs going on. You're on Shogun. You are a stunt coordinator, but you're also a director. You're also a writer. We all have many, many different hats that we wear, and I think that that's sort of the only way to do it in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part for this show too is I continued working as I was prepping and as I was shooting and as I was doing post. So when the first prep that I did, I was actually working on holidays over on the island. So that's when I would, on my days off or on the weekends, I'd go up and I'd scout Port Alberni on my own, and then I'd come back and work the week, and then stuff like that. So I got it going there, and then pulled out of there, and then I was doing Shogun, and then I'd go up to Squamish and scout there, and and then I think I went on to Tracker, and then during Tracker is when we finally got it going. So I took a leave of absence from Tracker. The producers there, I really appreciate them. They were allowed me to get someone to cover me for a couple episodes while I went and shot, and then I took a job in Mexico. I was doing the series in Mexico while I was doing the post editing and stuff like that. And Charlene took care of post here, and I edited over Zoom from Mexico City to Quebec, where my editor was. It's taken a year and all those things in between. But if I could never have done it if I didn't have jobs in between and keeping me going, sort of thing, it would have been impossible. Yeah.
Well, look, Laura, we can talk about this forever. We have to have you back on the podcast, especially once Protectors of the Land has come out and we have some developments on this indie feature path that you're taking, indie film path that you're taking in terms of trying to revamp things. It would be great to just keep that discussion going.
Yeah, most definitely. Like I said, I'm talking to a bunch of others, and I feel that coming together and we'll put it out to the rest of the community. Yeah, and I'm writing a whole bunch of stuff, and like I said, this was such a learning experience. I'm writing more contained now, and I was listening to some of your other podcasts, and you got to write for what you have. I got a really good relationship with Jamestown now, so I'm constantly thinking about what can I do in that 100-acre plot, that's a different story and showing different things and stuff like that. So it's really something you got to put your mind to when you're writing, because you go off on a tangent. And, oh shit, that's going to take visual effects, that's going to take special effects, that's going to take this, that, and then I got to tone it back down and watch the direction that you go off in when you're writing, for sure, 100%.
Lauro, if I can ask you, just as we're wrapping up, if you were giving advice to someone just getting started today, either as a filmmaker or as a stunt coordinator, what advice would you give them?
I think no matter what you're doing in this business, discipline is the key, and discipline enables you to keep your focus, right? So if you spread yourself too thin and go in too many directions, I've had so many different jobs, from being a stunt performer, stunt coordinator, second unit director, and sometimes I really got to sit myself down and say, what do you want to do right now, or what do you need to do right now, and then I just have to focus on that. I may have to just focus on stunt coordinating right now, or okay, I want to make another movie, so I'm going to focus on directing and writing, whatever that case might be. But you have to be disciplined in how you do it. You got to set yourself out a schedule to make yourself do it. And sometimes I fall off the wagon and I'm scattered, and then I can see that I'm like, I'm spinning my wheels. I'm going nowhere. I got to discipline myself and make myself sit down and write this many hours a day. I got to do this many emails to try and get my next job. I got to go out and train and do this so that I'm able to do this next job. You got to stay disciplined and stay focused. That's the key thing. And for me, martial arts gave me that core to be able to do that. And so I'm really fortunate that way.
Brilliant. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, Lauro. This has been an absolute pleasure. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too, guys, and keep it up, because, like I said, doesn't matter how many years you've been in this. I get great little things from all your podcasts, and like I said, whether it's something new or something that just reassures me that I'm on the right path, and go, yeah, I'm doing that too. That's great. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
All right, so that was an incredible chat with Lauro. For anyone about to tackle a low-budget action film, there's just so much to unpack there. What were some of your takeaways there, Anthony?
Gosh, how much time do we have now?
Yeah, exactly. I know.
So, I mean, I had a few key things, and I guess we can go into them. But write to what you have.
It's a common denominator, right, with all of our guests.
Lauro talking about Jamestown and talking about how once he realized that he didn't have he had to adjust his budget because he had access to Jamestown, which is our Western movie set here in British Columbia. He had access to that, but so he had to change his story to kind of fit the location that he had access to, and managed to make it work, and looked for unconventional ways. It's not to make Jamestown look like something a little bit different than what it's commonly used for, which is when calls the heart. And knowing that he didn't lose the story by reshaping the script, but he just fit it to what he could afford. So that was a big one on my end. I've got a bunch more, but what jumped out at you?
Well, I mean, sort of just going along that same path, right? Like he wanted to shoot it a certain way on the island and knew that it was just going to cost so much to bring the crew out there, and what, an extra $200,000 or whatever it was. When moving to Jamestown and making it work saved the movie. They shot it in 14 days, which is super tight. I mean, when you watch this movie, it's going to come out soon. We highly recommend it. It's a great low budget action movie that feels big budget. Lauro and the team did a fantastic job. But 14 days, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, and that's mind blowing. I love the little trick in Jamestown of where, one house is painted one way, or one side of the house is painted one way, and then the other side is different, and they just hung a curtain even in the middle to make it seem like two different houses. Those types of indie film tricks are just so good to use here. And you have to remember too, at the same time, Lauro was working on Shogun, which is one of the biggest television series in the world, where, one episode of Shogun is 5, 6, 7 times the budget that he had for his whole movie. And so being able to wear both hats just also is a testament to how talented and intelligent Lauro is when it comes to filmmaking. I thought that was really cool.
He's also, I mean, he's a stunt coordinator by trade. He's a stunt person by dream, and then he became a stunt coordinator. And he's really taking the tools that he's picked up over the years and applying it to being a film director. And that's we talk about resource based film, like building according to your resources and your talents. That's one of the things that I could say is an incentive to work at different jobs on a film set before you try to tackle being a director, or while you're trying to tackle being a director, go and take a job or try to find work in other areas, because the skills and talents that you bring to that can be invaluable. And there are very, very big examples of this. Like James Cameron was an art director, right? He came at it
Yeah.
from the art director standpoint, right?
And I think also Gareth Edwards, I believe, right, who made
Right.
Monsters, right? So he had a background in visual effects. And that's what
In
allowed him to
visual
do
effects.
this low budget indie movie that had major visual effects in it because he did it all himself. The Daniels
Mhm.
with, all of their music videos and all the way up to Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's their visual effects background that allowed them to pull this off.
Yeah, it allows you to also know what you're capable of. Like when you have that art
Yeah.
direction or that stunt coordinator, or you have the visual effects background, or special effects. Like let's say you're really, you're a person who can make monster costumes and things like that. Like what it takes to put those things together. So when you can make a movie surrounded by that particular avenue of film production, how much it's going to cost to fulfill what you need, or you also know how to do it yourself to save yourself a lot of money. One of the things that I really loved about what he said, and he didn't hit on it for too long, but I really liked it, was that he said, if your crew is asking you questions, it means that they're thinking about the film.
It's also very important as far as the collaborative process goes, because if you just come in there as a director and writer and tell everybody what to do and what it is, man, your movie's going to suck. Like, you need the experts to come in with their ideas, and your ideas plus their ideas take it to a brand new level, and it's greater than the sum of its parts. And that is when, the movie really becomes elevated.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big lesson. Just something that it triggered in me was just making sure to invite the crew into the process as early as you can. And that your best collaborators are the ones who are just going to challenge your assumptions. They're the ones that are going to challenge you to make a better story.
Okay, so that's it for this week's episode of Off the Lot. We want to hear from you. If there are any topics you want covered or any questions you'd like answered, please email us at podcast.offthelot@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Our handles are in the show notes. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And share this with your friends. See you next week.